Listen carefully, my beloved, because what I am about to say will shake the very foundations of what many have assumed for years. You have been told that speaking in tongues is the height of spiritual maturity. You have been told that it is the ultimate sign that you are filled with the Spirit of God. You have been told that without it, your prayers are weak and your faith is incomplete. But God says today, speaking in tongues is not what you think it is. It is not the magic proof of holiness. It is not the shortcut to intimacy. And it is not the guarantee of power. Too many have turned what was meant to be a spiritual expression into a ritual of pride, a badge of identity, a performance before men rather than a surrender before God. When God looks at you, He is not asking, what sound does your tongue make? He is asking, what posture does your heart hold? Tongues without obedience are empty noise. Tongues without surrender are just clanging cymbals. Tongues without humility become a mask to cover a life that refuses to bow before God in secret. This is why so many people can shout in tongues in public gatherings, yet return home bound by anger, bitterness, envy, and lust. This is why some can pray in tongues for hours, but still cannot forgive their neighbor. Because God never intended tongues to replace righteousness. God never intended tongues to substitute transformation. God looks beyond the sound of your lips and into the purity of your spirit. I tell you this with urgency. Stop idolizing the sound of tongues and start pursuing the heart of God. For when people lift their voices in a language they do not understand, some believe the power lies in the syllables, but the power has always been in the surrender. The miracle is not the language itself. The miracle is that God hears the cry of a soul too deep for words. Tongues were never given to exalt man. They were given to draw the soul closer to God. But when men boast about their utterances, when they divide the faithful between those who speak and those who do not, they distort the gift into a weapon of pride. God despises that pride because He alone is the one who gives gifts, and no gift was ever meant to replace the giver Himself. Do not think that because you can speak in tongues you are closer to God than the one who cannot. Do not imagine that your mutterings in secret make you more holy than the one who cries tears in silence. For God is not fooled by sound, He weighs the heart. He is not deceived by syllables, He measures the depth of love. The sound may impress men, but God is unmoved until He sees humility, brokenness, and true reverence. Many will stand before Him, saying, did we not cry out in tongues? Did we not sound spiritual? But He will respond, I never knew you, for your lips moved, but your heart was far from me. Tongues were meant to break the limits of human language, to allow the groanings of the Spirit to rise when words fail. But if you misuse it, if you treat it as a performance, if you see it as a tool to elevate yourself above others, it becomes an empty ritual that has no fragrance in the courts of heaven. And this is the tragedy. Many are chasing a sound instead of chasing God. Many are desperate to mimic the utterances of others, thinking that repeating syllables is proof of the Spirit's presence. Yet God is saying, I do not want your repetition. I want your repentance. I do not want your syllables, I want your submission. I do not want the noise of your tongue. I want the posture of your soul. Understand this: tongues without love are nothing. Tongues without truth are powerless. Tongues without holiness are counterfeit. For the Spirit of God cannot be reduced to mere sounds. He is the fire that burns away sin, the wind that shakes the foundations of complacency, the breath that gives life to the dry bones. When He moves upon you, tongues may come, but transformation must follow. If your tongue moves, but your life remains the same, then you have mistaken noise for power. God is calling His people back to the essence of prayer. He is calling you back to the purity of communion. Speaking in tongues was never the goal. It was the overflow. It was the soul's cry when words fell short, not the measuring stick of faith. Do not let the enemy trap you into chasing sounds while ignoring substance. Do not let pride deceive you into thinking you are spiritual because you can shout in a language you don't understand. The devil does not fear your noise. He fears your surrender. He fears your holiness. He fears your unshakable obedience to God's will. Beloved, if you want power, stop imitating sounds and start imitating submission. If you want breakthrough, stop chasing syllables and start chasing purity. If you want God's presence, stop focusing on what man can hear and start focusing on what God can see in the hidden chambers of your soul. The Spirit groans with utterances too deep for words, but those groans are birthed in brokenness, in humility, in the secret place where no one watches but God. You may speak in tongues, and that is good if God gives it. But do not rest there. Ask yourself, do I walk in integrity? Do I treat others with love? Do I keep my heart pure? Do I obey God when no one is watching? For these are the things that measure your closeness to God. Tongues are not the crown, obedience is. Tongues are not the seal, holiness is. Tongues are not the destination. They are only a tool for those who already walk with God in reverence. Do not misunderstand me. Beloved, speaking in tongues can be a true expression of the Spirit's work. It can be a powerful release when your words fall short. It can be the groaning of your soul rising before the throne. But it is not the center of your faith. It is not the evidence of maturity. It is not the ultimate sign of power. The ultimate sign of power is a life that bows before God, a life that resists sin, a life that overcomes temptation, a life that reflects His light in a dark world. That is the mark of true spirituality. So I say again, tongues are not what you think. They are not a performance. They are not a status. They are not a guarantee of closeness. They are simply one way God allows His Spirit to move through a vessel. But what God truly desires is a heart that belongs to Him completely. He desires lips that speak truth, hands that serve with purity, eyes that refuse to look upon wickedness, feet that walk in righteousness, and a spirit that trembles in awe of His holiness. That is what He longs for. That is what He blesses. That is what He anoints. Beloved, open your heart and hear this truth. The greatest deception of the enemy is not always in obvious lies, but in distorted truths. He takes what God has given, twists its meaning, and then convinces people to chase after the shadow rather than the substance. Speaking in tongues is one of those areas where many have been misled. They believe that the mere utterance of unknown sounds proves they are close to God. But God is not seeking sounds. He is seeking submission. God is not impressed by your voice. He is moved by your obedience. The power of prayer is not in the syllables that leave your lips, but in the sincerity that rises from your soul. When Hannah cried out in desperation, she did not utter strange syllables, yet her groaning touched the throne of God, and He answered. When David poured his heart out in his psalms, there were no tongues of angels, but there was depth, there was purity, there was honesty, and God responded. The truth is this: God listens to the cry of a broken heart far more than the noise of a restless tongue. Some have turned tongues into a badge of superiority. They walk into gatherings as though their sound elevates them above others, as though their muttering makes them more holy than the one who quietly kneels in humility. But God rejects such arrogance. He does not measure you by the volume of your utterances, but by the weight of your devotion. Do not forget that Lucifer once carried the sound of heaven, yet he fell because pride corrupted his heart. This is the warning. Tongues without humility lead not to elevation, but to deception. God is calling His people to understand that tongues are not the centerpiece of faith. They are a tool, an overflow, a vessel. The true centerpiece of faith is a heart surrendered to God alone. That is why when you kneel before Him, even your silence can thunder in the heavens. That is why when you cry in brokenness, your tears can speak louder than 1,000 syllables. That is why when you whisper a single word in faith, it carries more power than endless noise without surrender. For God does not respond to performance. He responds to authenticity. Think of this carefully. Why would God, who knows every language, need you to produce sounds you do not understand in order to hear you? He does not. He gave tongues as a gift to edify, not to divide. He gave it as a means of expression, not as the measure of holiness. But man has taken what God gave and made it an idol. And every idol, even if it is born from something once pure, becomes an abomination when it replaces God Himself. If you cling to tongues but ignore holiness, you have made the gift into your God. If you pursue the sound but neglect obedience, you have replaced God's will with your own desire. The truth is this: tongues will fade, languages will cease, but the presence of God remains eternal. And what will you carry into eternity? Not the sound of your syllables, but the fruit of your obedience. Not the rhythm of your utterances, but the purity of your heart. Not the performance of your tongue, but the depth of your surrender. These are the things that endure. These are the things God esteems. These are the things that prove you belong to Him. Let us not be a people who impress one another, but fail to move God. Let us not be a generation that makes noise, but lacks power. Let us not chase after gifts while ignoring the giver. Instead, let us return to the altar of truth, where our prayers are not judged by sound, but by sincerity. Let us become a people who tremble before God, who weep in His presence, who long not to be seen by men, but to be heard by Him. For that is where true power is born, not in the echo of tongues, but in the fire of a surrendered soul. And I tell you this with boldness: God is exposing false spirituality in this hour. He is stripping away the masks of performance. He is tearing down the altars of pride. He is shaking his people awake to see that spirituality is not about how loud you pray, how eloquently you speak, or how often you display outward signs. Spirituality is about how deeply you belong to God, how much you walk in His ways, how faithfully you obey His commands, and how willingly you humble yourself before His majesty. Tongues can edify the spirit, yes, but they cannot cleanse the heart. Only surrender to God can do that. Tongues can lift your soul when words fail, yes, but they cannot replace a life of holiness. Only obedience to God can accomplish that. Tongues can express mysteries beyond human comprehension, yes, but they cannot carry you into eternal life. Only faithfulness to God will lead you there. Do you see, beloved, how easily people are distracted by the gift and forget the giver? This is why God says, speaking in tongues, is not what you think. Beloved, you must grasp this with all the strength of your spirit. The true sign that God is working in you is not in the sound that comes out of your mouth, but in the fruit that comes out of your life. What good is it if you can utter 1,000 words in tongues, but cannot control your temper? What good is it if you can pray loudly in gatherings, but in the quiet of your home you neglect prayer altogether? What good is it if your lips move with spiritual sounds, but your heart burns with jealousy, bitterness, or secret sin? God is not deceived by outward appearances. God searches the heart, and it is the heart that must be transformed if you desire to walk in His power. Understand this deeply. When God pours out His Spirit, the evidence is not merely in the sounds of tongues, but in the transformation of character. A person truly filled with the Spirit of God will begin to love more deeply, forgive more freely, live more humbly, and walk more faithfully. The Spirit of God produces holiness, purity, and wisdom. Tongues may come as a sign, but the real proof is the life you live. If your life has not changed, if your desires are still entangled with the world, if your heart is still hardened against the will of God, then your tongues are nothing more than noise in the wind. We must stop chasing the appearance of spirituality and begin chasing the reality of God's presence. For too long, people have been satisfied with sounding holy rather than being holy. Too many have been content to impress men with noise instead of trembling before God with reverence. But God is shaking His people. He is calling them out of empty performances into genuine encounters. He is saying, return to me, not with the noise of your lips, but with the brokenness of your spirit. Return to me, not with the imitation of sounds, but with the purity of obedience. And here is the danger, beloved. When people equate tongues with spirituality, they open the door for deception. There are many voices in the unseen realm, and not every voice is from God. The enemy can counterfeit sounds. He can mimic the patterns of tongues. He can give an appearance of spirituality that deceives the undiscerning. That is why some who claim to be spiritual still live in bondage. That is why some who shout in tongues are still tormented by darkness. Because not every sound is sanctified, not every utterance is holy, not every tongue comes from God. If the life does not bear fruit, if the heart does not bow in obedience, then what you hear may not be the Spirit of God at all, but a counterfeit designed to lead astray. This is why discernment is essential. You must weigh every expression not by how it sounds, but by what it produces. God never gives a gift to glorify pride. He gives gifts to draw His people closer to Him. If your gift leads you into arrogance, it is not being used rightly. If your gift becomes a source of division, it is not being used rightly. If your gift distracts you from holiness, then it has become a stumbling block rather than a blessing. Beloved, return to the simplicity of prayer. Prayer was never meant to be a performance, but a posture. It was never about proving something to others, but about communing with God in truth. When you pray, whether in words you understand or in groanings too deep to articulate, what matters most is that your heart is aligned with God. What matters is that you bow before Him in sincerity. What matters is that your life reflects the surrender of your soul. This is what moves heaven. This is what shakes the earth. This is what causes the enemy to tremble. Not the sound of your voice, but the authority of a life fully yielded to God. So I tell you again, with urgency, speaking in tongues is not what you think. Do not idolize it. Do not misuse it. Do not allow it to distract you from what God truly desires. Instead, pursue God Himself. Seek His face more than His gifts. Desire His holiness more than His manifestations. Long for His presence more than the applause of men. For when you walk with God in humility, when you live in obedience, when you surrender every part of yourself to Him, then whether you speak in tongues or not, your life will thunder with the power of heaven. And hear me with clarity. The greatest prayer you will ever pray is not the one that impresses others, but the one that moves you to tears before God. The greatest language you will ever speak is not the one unknown to men, but the one known to God alone. The language of sincerity, the language of humility, the language of a broken heart crying out, God, I belong to you. This is the language that never fails. This is the prayer that never goes unheard. This is the cry that reaches His throne. Beloved, hear me now with the deepest urgency of my spirit. God is not calling you to chase sounds. He is calling you to chase Him. He is not asking for lips that babble without meaning. He is asking for hearts that beat in reverence and surrender. He is not seeking noise. He is seeking truth. The true evidence of His Spirit in you will never be measured in syllables, but in the holiness of your walk, in the purity of your choices, and in the unwavering obedience of your heart. Do not be deceived by the show of spirituality. Do not let your soul settle for empty echoes when God desires the depth of your being. It is better to whisper one word of genuine prayer in the stillness of the night than to fill the air with endless noise that carries no weight in heaven. God hears sincerity. He responds to brokenness. He moves upon humility. That is what He longs for from you, not just your tongue, but your life. And so I challenge you today, examine your heart. Ask yourself, am I living for sound, or am I living for God? Am I more concerned with appearing spiritual, or with truly being transformed by His power? Am I seeking His gifts, or am I seeking His presence? This is the dividing line. This is the question that will determine the course of your destiny. Rise now with a new conviction. Strip away the pride, strip away the performance, strip away the shallow displays. Bow before God in truth. Let your prayer be clothed in sincerity. Let your words, whether understood or not, flow from a heart wholly surrendered. And let your life itself become the loudest tongue you ever speak. A life that testifies of God's holiness, a life that reflects His light, a life